Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of voice of radio. So today we need to do that thing that I like doing, one of my favorite series on this channel. Free Pokemon cards that are so gosh darn good, they are never coming back. Sound like a plan? Excellent. And I'm going to start off with one which it was not going to make my list. I'll be perfectly honest with you here. This one was not going to end up on my list. But I'm going to give a shout out here to Agarok8734, who suggested Palkia SP Lv.X, which is actually Palkia G Lv.X. And they've suggested, well, hang on a second, we've not seen anything similar ever since. And you know what? They're right. They are absolutely right. Now, well, let's start off with the ability. What we got on the ability is, once during your turn, you may use this power. Any player who has 4 or more bench Pokemon chooses 3 of his or her bench Pokemon, put the other bench Pokemon and all cards attached to them into the Lost Zone. This power can't be used if Palkia G is affected by a special condition. Fun little side note here. This used to be a very standard thing back in the day, whereby all of these, we used to have Poke Powers, which are things you had to actually do, active abilities, and Poke Bodies, which are things that were always there, that passive abilities. But the Poke Powers didn't work if you were affected by a special condition. Don't dwell on that, it's not important. However, this ability is kind of fun, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of fun. And it's the Lost Zone aspect that really gets me here. Because we've seen plenty of Pokemon that will restrict your bench. You know, Glamora EX, still perfectly legal's got Dustfield. Your opponent can have more than 3 bench Pokemon, very much along the same lines as Palkia here. But they discard, and then they can be recovered, etc. So that's fine. Sudowoodo was a similar thing, but on a basics for actually let you have 4 bench Pokemon. Collapse Stadium was a stadium, so it'll let you have 4 bench Pokemon. And then we even, if you want to go back a little bit, we had Dusknoir, whereby if your opponent has 4 or more bench Pokemon, you could choose them and shuffle them back into the deck. So it's not that we've never had an ability which limits your opponent's bench before. We've had plenty of abilities that will limit your opponent's bench. The thing about Palkia is it forces you to Lost Zone. Now, the counter-argument to including Palkia on this list is, well, hang on a second, Wassy. Come on, mate. It's a Lost Zone. The Lost Zone as a mechanic comes around every few years and then disappears. So maybe it will come back. It's just taking its sweet time doing so because the Lost Zone takes a long time to come back around. And on the one hand, yes, I agree with you. But on the other hand, the Lost Zone has come around a couple of times since the whole SP Gen 4 era. And this hasn't come back. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I don't think it's coming back. It really doesn't feel like this is coming back. And that means that it deserves to be on this list. And I kind of like cards like this, because most of the time, most of the suggestions you guys make are cards which I'm thinking of or I've got on the long list, and then you suggest them, and I'm kind of like, yeah, that's a good suggestion. It's time to put it on the list. This is a card that I am happy to admit I did not have on my list of potential cards to be featured in this series. But I'm telling you, they're right. They are absolutely right when they say that this is an ability that we've just not had since. So maybe this should be on the list of cards that are never being reprinted, and now it is. Now, one card that we need to be having a talk about because of Destined Rivals coming out is Guzma. You see, what's just happened is we've had one of those things whereby a card gets printed which just screams that old card you want is never coming back. You can't have that old card back. And that is Giovanni and Guzma. Giovanni basically comes out and says, hey, You're not having Guzma ever again. Get over it. Because this is just a worse version of Guzma. Sometimes there are cards which I say aren't coming back because they're too good. They're too strong, they're too powerful, they're just inherently broken. Other times, it's not necessarily that the card is broken per se. It's that Pokemon come out and basically announce very clearly, this card ain't coming back. So if we have a look at Guzma, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active. If you do, switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench. So it's a switch combined with Gusting. It's very, very good. Team Rocket's Giovanni, switch your active Team Rocket's Pokemon with one of your benched Team Rocket's Pokemon. If you do, switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active. So it is a switch, and you have to switch first and then Gusting. And it has to be written that way, because otherwise you could play it in a non-Team Rockets deck and be like, oh, I've Gusted, I can't switch, never mind. So they've written it the way they have, so that it forces you to do the Gusting after you've done the switch, meaning if you can't do the switch, you can't do the Gusting. Same kind of thing as Guzma, switch plus Gusting in a supporter card form. The big difference here, and it is a big gigantic difference, Giovanni is locked to Team Rocket decks, and Guzma isn't. And it's really quite simple. If we were going to be getting a new Guzma, that would make Team Rocket's Giovanni almost pointless. Now, there is a counter-argument here. And the counter-argument is, maybe, just maybe, it's actually Team Rocket locked to help out other cards, like Team Rocket's Receiver, which can search for a Team Rocket supporter card, or Team Rocket's Factory that lets you draw 2 cards during your turn, but it only works if you played a Team Rocket supporter during this turn. Remember, there's a mistranslation of this one going around. It is draw 2 cards at any point during your turn, as long as you've played a Team Rocket supporter. It is not draw 2 cards at the moment you play a Team Rocket supporter. So there is a counter-argument with this one, and the counter-argument is maybe they locked it to Rocket's Pokemon just so that it can interact with the other Team Rocket cards, and maybe Guzma could come back. I don't think it will, because remember, we've also had Prime Catcher, which is the same thing, Gusting plus Switch, but on an ace spec. And don't get me wrong, you could also argue here, well, hang on a second, maybe you can have it on an item, but it's an ace spec, but you can have it on a supporter normally. Maybe that's all right. But it kind of has to come a point where we look at this and we go, well, we're doing an awful lot of, well, what about this, what about this, what about this, what about this? And actually, at some point, you kind of have to acknowledge the fact that maybe all of these arguments are just trying too hard to argue it could come back. Shout out to Type Masters 2871, by the way. This was one that as soon as I saw Giovanni, I'm like, Guzma's going on the list. But shout out to Type Masters 2871, who did suggest this in the most recent video. So yay! Shout out to them. And let's finish off having a look at the Milotic from Flashfire. Now, I like to do, for a long time on this series, I refused to do banned cards because they're obviously not coming back. They got banned. And then I started getting a lot of suggestions in this series for banned cards. And it made me realize that there's an awful lot of people watching this series who maybe weren't around when cards got banned and don't have that context of why they got banned and why they cannot come back. So now I kind of like to end the video with looking at a banned card so that we can tell the story of why this card's so dumb and why this card cannot come back. And make no mistake about it, Milotic is dumb and Milotic is not coming back. Now, it's all about the ability Energy Grace. Once during your turn before you attack, you can knock out this Pokemon, and if you do, attach 3 basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon, excluding Pokemon EX. Now, this is banned in the expanded format, and frankly, it should be banned in the expanded format, because this card is way too good. Firstly, self-KO. And we need to be very, very careful when it comes to self-KO. Because even if we stick to what's out and legal right now, there are a bunch of cards that get significantly better when you self-KO. Think of something like Counter Catcher or Item Gusting, which can only be played if you're behind on prizes. So use a self-KO to make yourself go behind on prizes. There we go. Job's a good 'un. Or something like INO, which gives your opponent a new hand equal to their remaining prizes, so you can self-KO to make INO stronger and hurt your opponent more. Or things like Charizard, whose attack gets more powerful, etc, etc. And we've got good self-KO Pokemon at the moment, the poster child of which is, of course, Dustois, self-KO to drop 13 damage counters. To the point where, over in Japan, at least we haven't had it yet, but over in Japan, well, they've gone and printed Psyduck. And Psyduck basically has an ability which says, self-KO doesn't work. An ability that would cause you to be KO doesn't actually work right now. Gutted. Because these attacks are kind of getting a little bit out of hand. But then you combine that with the fact that we're accelerating free energy. Now, in Expanded, the reason it got banned was basically because of Trevenant and Dustois. What we would use is we would use Milotic to power up Trevenant and Dustois, and then they could use Nightwatch to do 150 damage and choose 2 random cards from your opponent's hand, and they shuffle them into their deck. But obviously, you can combine that with cards that prey on your opponent's hand, based on the amount of prize cards they've taken. You give them extra prize cards while building up Trevenant and Dustois, and it gets out of hand from there. And I could talk more about the deck and how it works, but you've got the basics here. You know what you need to know. Milotic both gave away prizes to use other cards to punish, while also accelerating energy. And the problem was Trevenant and Dustois was a GX, not an EX. And this is when we run into these kind of things. Milotic comes around, and the relevant Pokemon at the moment are EXs. So Pokemon look at this card and they go, here we go, but don't worry, we're not going to let it use EXs. We aren't going to fall for that. Well, unfortunately, it's not that easy. Because then all of a sudden it ends up in a format with GXs and legitimately, actually, properly broken, and not in a good way. And there's a few different ways to look at Milotic. You could look at it as Pokemon want to be super careful with self-KO abilities. You could look at it as accelerating free basic energy in one go is crazy good. You could look at it as it was printed as a card which didn't help EXs, but then ended up breaking GXs. Either way, there is a lot about this, and it's all the ability. The attack's terrible. But you can look at this and go, well, hang on a second. We're not getting that Milotic back. This Milotic is actually proper job full-on broken. Will we get self-KO abilities? Yes. Will we get energy acceleration abilities? Yes. Although this was a particularly broken one. Will we get abilities that help out one type of Pokemon and then end up helping out a different one by accident? No, honestly. Because remember, like Cherim from Battle Stars, who I think was like the first one that did this, that let you attach a grass energy from your hands often as you like during your turn, but not to a rule box Pokemon. And little mini history lesson here, rule box came around as a term exactly for things like this. Cards that, well, they're not helping out EXs, and then all of a sudden GXs are there and it's broken. Pokemon didn't want that. So that's why Rulebox exists as a thing, so that this doesn't happen again. Because basically it happened multiple times. But an ability that self-KOs and accelerates free energy, oh, that was broken. That was broken, but now it's gone, and it ain't never coming back. So now it's over to you guys. Tell me what cards you don't think are ever coming back. Let me know in the comment section. As I've proven in this video, I will take some of your suggestions. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at Lv.X. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Uncle Pokepeter, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and seems to be a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.